Welcome back to the Horror Master YouTube channel. Welcome back to episode number 15 of my controversial uncover series. Can't believe we're going for 15 episodes. I think I've missed only 1 week in the entire. I've done this series, so 1 week out of the entire of this series, I haven't done an episode. It's quite, in my opinion, an accomplishment that I've had this series gone for as long as it's going, and hopefully it continues to progress to more and more videos. But since last time I talked about Vital Remains as Icons of Evil, there was a band that I mentioned before in the video that kind of automatically clicked, and of course that is American death metal pioneers Deicide. Now, Deicide is an American band that is highly influenced by both Possessed and Slayer, of course, being a more anti-religious band, death metal band, brutal, not really brutal death metal, technical at times, depending on the albums, but you cannot talk one without the other. And with Deicide, there were so many album covers I could have chosen, but I think I went with the cover that I personally, the minute when I thought about this series, this has to be the album cover that I should talk about. So we're gonna be talking about in this episode the original concept of their third album, Once Upon a Cross, released on April 18, 1995 by Roadrunner Records. So Once Upon a Cross, like I mentioned before, was my introduction, believe it or not, to Deicide. And of course, after that, I actually went back and listened to their previous albums, Legion, and of course the self-titled debut, and became a fan. To me, Once Upon a Cross was my introduction to the band. Of course, the title track was one of the first Deicide songs I ever listened to. Kill the Christian, When Satan Rules His World, pretty much every single song in this album and pretty much their entire discography is a bit blasphemous. I mean, Trick or Betray, they were the children of the underworld, Christ Denied, Pick Your Fucking Poison. Deicide is not afraid to speak up their mind when it comes to anti-religious, mostly Christianity, poking them in the fucking face. So when the idea Once Upon a Cross came to mind, the original concept of the album cover was to have I have my notes right here. I'm pretty sure I had the album covers somewhere around here. Was to have the original cover was to depict a disembowel Jesus Christ, kind of how he was crucified, but you can kind of see all the organs and the dismemberment and all that. And at first, Roadrunner was full on board to put in this as the album cover in the album. And kudos to Roadrunner. At the time, Roadrunner was one of the biggest record labels that you could possibly get signed on to. Unfortunately, Roadrunner has fallen off over the years, but early Roadrunner, one of the best record labels to be as a metal band. So the record label was full on supporting of this original concept of the album cover. At the last minute, and at the 11th hour, the record label decided to change the album cover because of the controversy it was going to provoke. And of course, like I mentioned before, when you have an album cover depicting Jesus Christ, crossed with the disembowel with his organs out, you can see the ribs and the skin and all that. You're pretty sure they're gonna get some fucked up people who are gonna try to replicate that, and they're gonna blame Deicide for kind of influencing in them. And then the other side of the spectrum, you got some really, really high religious people are gonna take offended that Deicide and the record label had the audacity to release this kind of album cover into the world and into the masses in 1995, when the underground was so huge in the underground. This was in 1995, which this was right after the church burnings in Norway, 3 years after. So we're still, at the time, they were still kind of trying not to provoke as much as the Norwegians, even though the Norwegians have done more fucked up shit in the underground than Norwegian black metal. I mean, look at Down of the Black Hearts, for fuck's sake. But Once Upon a Cross, the concept of the original album cover was to have the autopsy of Jesus Christ. But like I mentioned before, at the 11th hour, the band decided to change it to the more notable, iconic blood sheet over the disemboweled Jesus Christ, which at times I do like the alternative album cover, but luckily the band decided to kind of keep the original album cover when you open the sleeve of the album, which I unfortunately have not yet to have that album in my collection. Hell, I don't have any Deicide in my collection. Hopefully one day I can get some Deicide in the future, so I can finally have some Deicide in my show. But you know, the the lengths that a lot of album covers that I've talked about in previous episodes. I mean, mostly almost to the point of Vital Remains icons of even the previous episode, that they decided to just do it and create something so disgusting, so evil, so blasphemous that we as metal fans are gonna see as the most brutal, awesome depicting of Jesus Christ. But in the other side of the spectrum, people who are not familiar with the band, who are not familiar with the death metal, who are not familiar with their lyrics, their ideologies, their beliefs, even though I think Glenn is an atheist. I think the majority of the band is atheists. Don't quote me on that. But, when you come into all those interest perspectives, it's kind of a weird thing that this album cover, almost like I mentioned before, was almost gonna be at the very front, in your face, just telling you, yeah, this is our depiction of Jesus Christ. What the fuck are you gonna do about it? You're gonna sue us? Ha, freedom of speech, bitch. But I'm just imagining if this album cover would have been released maybe a couple of years earlier, maybe around the 80s, maybe around 87, 80, 89. I think it was still been censored, being at the time of the landscape of Christianity. It would have given, the PMRC another point in their crusade against metal and all that. Of course, thankfully, Dee Snider, Frank Zappa kind of stood up for metal and rock, so for that kind of helped. But Once Upon a Cross, like I mentioned before, was my introduction to the band. One of my favorite actually albums that a lot of people really don't give the time to listen to. Yeah, I know it's not gonna. Once Upon a Cross will not ever be compared to Legend and the Subtitle debut. I mean, those two are fucking classics. But Once Upon a Cross is up there in terms of one of my favorites, and you know, it still baffles my mind that the band did. I mean, Once Upon a Cross. When you think Once Upon a Cross, you think of something Jesus Christ related, but you never thought they would go to that extreme to the album cover, which I do like the album cover, and I mentioned before a million times in this series. Was born and raised a Catholic. I really don't have a problem with that kind of iconography. You know, it really doesn't offend me because I'm not the kind of person who is really more into more religious, or more. Even though I do believe, I'm not the kind of person that you see something so out there, it's gonna trigger me and try to make me do something that I'm gonna regret. But try showing this. I'll say it again. I'll say it once again. Try to show this to your really religious parent, or in my case, to your really religious relatives, and they're gonna think you're fucking crazy. Which I don't fucking care. You know, it's one of those album covers that I'm just thinking what would have happened if it actually the record label went through with it. Like this album cover, if it would have gone through with it, it would have been probably been higher in this series. Probably would have been one of my priority videos when I started doing this series. Even though every single video I've done is a priority, but this one would have been at the top with Dawn of the Black Hearts, Virgin Killer, and Matando Güeros. But it's one of those things that for some reason the record label did the smart thing and decided to change the album cover at the 11th hour. And it's an album cover, the alternative album cover, or I guess the original album cover, kind of is iconic too. I've seen it in patches, I've seen it in tattoos. I think I've seen one person actually have the back patch of the original concept, the original artwork of Once Upon a Cross. And I think that's fucking brutal and fucking amazing, and he's a fucking trooper for doing that. But I don't think there was ever any CDs, any vinyls with the original album, our concept. I think I don't think there ever was. Like I mentioned before, they were smart enough to put the original concept inside of the inside of the record. When you open the liner notes and the artwork, it's there. So at least the band didn't have to bite the bullet as much if they would have had to put up the album, remove the album because of record labels, of retailers that wanted selling it, and then putting it back in the shelves with an alternative album cover. Even though it would have been a collector's item, it's still a really awesome album cover. And Deicide, if you're watching this, please re-release the first three albums, because they're fucking hard to find and they're fucking expensive to get. Even though I might buy the bullet once in a while when it comes to certain CDs, please re-release them. I really would love to have them in my collection one of these days. But regardless of that, Once Upon a Cross, if you haven't listened to it, give it a listen. Look at the album artwork, look at the original album artwork concept while listening to music, and you're gonna see why the record label decided to do what it did. And it's a iconography that's gonna stay in your mind for a very long time. And that's for this video, guys. I actually really enjoyed this video. I'm still working on my CD collection update. I'm gathering a bit more CDs. I might do it somewhere in the near future, maybe in a week, 2 weeks from now, depending on how many CDs I get. I'm still working on my catalog decapitation rankings, so stay tuned for that. And I'm thinking of more album covers to bring you guys. Like I mentioned before, let me know down in the comments what other album artworks you want me to tackle, any suggestions, any album artworks you think are controversial in your eyes, and I'll see if we possibly make it a video, and we'll go from there. But thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, everyone, and until next time, stay metal.